Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Shayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Siyata Parakamanam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagaritam
Rupa
Sahagana
Karamayam.
Raganatan Vitam Samsidevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Sya Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamana Miste Sarasati Devi Gurvani Pajarini Nirvishesa Sunivari Bhaskata Desanarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityanand Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Om Aganati Maranda Shaganangana Sakya Chaksurun Meritam Yanatashmai Shri Gurve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swapanadikam Vandeham Sikadu Siyata Parakamanam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Larita Vishikantam Tam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Today is a special day. This is the day that in 1977, Prabhupada left the planet. And that year was November 14th. Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. I think here we'll have an observance, probably mostly in the evening, I imagine. I don't know what Bhavi has in mind. I'm a little under the weather. I have a little gastrointestinal problems today, so I'm just going to do what people tell me to do, not take an organizational role. I was the president of Berkeley. Prabhupada had been ill most of that year in 1977. Had to cancel world tours, world visits, and ended up coming to Vrindavan. And the word went out that every disciple should try to come and see him. And his time was short. Temples would pray morning and evening. Krishna, if it is your desire, let Prabhupada be cured and stay with us. We didn't feel, as the sons of Prabhupada, capable or qualified of carrying on this international mission without the guidance of Prabhupada. So the last, we wanted to do whatever we could to appeal to Krishna to keep Prabhupada with us for as long as possible. And indeed, Prabhupada was there most of 1977, in spite of the fact he was gravely ill. I remember earlier that year, we went to the Mayapur festival in March, the Gaur Purnima festival. Prabhupada was giving the talk. His health had already started to decline at that time, and it was going to be March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Going to be another 9 months, but he was giving the Bhagavatam class, or maybe 700 young people in their 20s and early 30s in the Lotus building there in Mayapur. Probably stopped. He interrupted what he was saying. I forget what the subject matter was. He looked out over all these young people and he said, I'm an old man. My time is almost over. But he said, each one of you have at least 50 years of preaching ahead of you. Tears came from his eyes. I can understand from that, but Prabhupada loved preaching so much. He loved spreading the gospel, spreading Krishna consciousness, that he was in a transcendental way envious of us, that he was going to have to leave, go to another phase. He's going to have to transition. But we were young enough that we could look forward to another 50 years of preaching Krishna consciousness. And it's kind of funny here sitting in Spanish Fork in 2024, realizing that my 50 years is now gone. And so to those of you who are younger, you have 50 years of preaching, and I'm envious of you because there's nothing better than preaching. Prabhupada said, preaching is life. Preaching is life. At the Sunday feast, people see me walking around, soliciting questions from our guests, spending time with them, responding to their inquiries as best I can with a big smile on my face. And they come up to me with a suggestion that, shall I bring you a plate? Shall I bring you a plate of prasadam? Or maybe they've taken it upon themselves to already load up a plate with prasadam and bring it to me. And I say, I'm getting prasadam. I'm getting prasadam in the preaching, answering these time-honored, time-tested questions about who we are, why we're here, what's the purpose of life, and what do we do about it. There's nothing more essential. There's no better, more profitable way of spending one's time than listening to such answers and to being in a position of delivering them. And there's only one way that you can be in that authoritative, authentic position, and that is through the agency of a spiritual master. Krishna teaches us through the chain of disciplic succession. Just like knowledge of law comes down through the ages, and it may be adjusted a little bit according to time, places, and circumstances. There may be new laws put on the books, all laws changed a little bit. But basically, the body of law is called obiter dictum. All the precedents that have been established throughout generations and generations of practicing law and trials. And if you're going to walk into that tradition, you have to join a law firm. You have to pass your bar, and you have to join a law firm and apprentice yourself. You have to clerk. And it's not just about learning more facts and figures and statutes and laws. It's about associating with people who have been practicing law most of their lives. When you associate with such people, you get a sixth sense about you. You pick up from them their intuition, their insights. It's invaluable. So serving the experienced veteran attorneys is considered essential. Nobody is ever given or awarded a degree to practice law unless they have submitted themselves as a clerk. Same thing for medicine. You can't just wing it. Of course, nowadays you can go on the internet, and I think what is irritable bowel syndrome. I was searching that last night, tossing attorney. You can find out a lot of theoretical knowledge on the internet, but that doesn't make you a doctor. That doesn't make everybody who has access to Google a doctor. The thing that really makes you a doctor is having associated with other doctors who've been practicing for a long period of time. They have their insights, they have their intuitions. Prabhupada once told a story. Prabhupada was in Allahabad. He was consulting with a doctor. Prabhupada used to deliver pharmaceuticals to medical persons. So as they were chatting in this man's storefront shop, a passerby went by and he just coughed. He coughed once. And the doctor said, he's got a fatal disease. He has no idea how serious a condition he's in. And sure enough, within 24 hours, he passed away. That you can't learn in books. You have to learn it in association with people who have immersed themselves in the culture and the practice and the lore for many, many times. What was attractive about Prabhupada was that when he talked about the spiritual world, you believed him. It came alive. If I talk to you about driving up Main Street in Spanish Fork, passing the library on the left-hand side, newly built, the old library on the right-hand side, the sports shore, Bruce Hall's MVP sports shore, which is now transformed into something else, a knick-knack and curio shop, past Fat Jack's Pizza. on the way to the Walmart in Springville, exit 263. You don't have any reason to doubt me. I'm replete with facts and figures and descriptions and details. My confidence is high. You know right away that I know what I'm speaking of. You know right away that I know I've done this trip hundreds, if not thousands of times before. I'm an authority on how to get from the temple to Springville. Prabhupada spoke so authoritatively on the spiritual world. You had no cause to doubt him. Hardly in the whole Judeo-Christian tradition, we don't get any information about the world beyond the sky at all. Who lives there, what the clothing is like, what the culture is, what the vegetation is, what the style of architecture is, what the bodily features are, what the foodstuffs are, what the cultures are, what the observances are. Prior to Prabhupada coming to the Western world, we were clueless. We had no idea. The spiritual world was just something imagined, something made up, something ambiguous and ambivalent and open interpretation. If you said anything about the spiritual world, you were just imagining it. You were just faking it. You were just playing it by ear. Prabhupada gave us the Krishna book, Pastimes of Krishna, which are replications of the pastimes that Krishna performs in the spiritual world itself. Prabhupada talked about Sudama, Madhu Mangala, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, the bushes and creepers and vines of Vrindavan, the gopis, the cows, the cowherd boys, in such a way that, yeah, this is true, this is real. Krishna says, Acharya Mambigare Navamandya Pradyashagare. The spiritual master can be accepted as the representative of the Supreme Personality of God because he carries with him all the knowledge of the spiritual world. When I was young, sometimes it was a criticism that you'd level one person to another. Chill. You're too heavy, man. You're too heavy. Back off. Chill out. It's interesting to note that the meaning of the word guru is heavy. Guru means heavy. But it's not a negative derogatory term. The comparison is made with the monsoon cloud after months and months and months of drought. I read one this morning that every American state is in drought except for Alaska and Kentucky, I think. Although I don't think it's particularly serious here in Utah. But in India, you have months and months and months without a speck of rainfall. The heat gets up to 115, 120 degrees. Everything gets desiccated, yellowed, withered, parched. The ground is cracked. There's hardly anything for the livestock to eat. It's difficult to produce foodstuffs for human consumption. But just imagine the pleasure, the joy, when that first little gray monsoon cloud appears on the horizon. The reason that you're happy, the reason that you welcome that cloud is you know because of its color, its darkish bluish black color, it's full with rainfall. It's heavy with precipitation. It's heavy with moisture. So, and how ready you are for that cloud to come. You've been praying for it for weeks and months, and now it appears, fulfilling your desires. Unfortunately, as far as spiritual life goes, it's not exactly true to say that people are waiting for it, longing for it, expecting it, celebrating it. The attitude of most people with respect to self-realization is meh, meh. What's on Facebook? What's on YouTube? What's on Instagram? What's on TikTok? Here's something to that effect. Consider you're not the body you're living in. You're eternal spirit soul. So where shall begin? Every living entity, including you, is eternal. It's the inner self which is true, the outer body, misty like morning dew. Musty and crusty after youth passes, earth to earth, dust to dust, ash to ashes. Every 7 years, each cell is replaced. The old bodies are erased, displaced, effaced. Every cell is changing. You're always reincarnating. The question remains, who are you and what are you going to do about material contamination? You can ignore the concept and hit the exit by the nearest route, or you can stay and listen to our lyrics and get a vision of the truth. Does your life have meaning? You're just trying to escape. You're just breathing and taking up space. Most people are not open. They don't want to know. The question I propose from me to you is, do you have the eyes to see? Soul is the unborn. It never grows old. You can tell by the way they cry, trying to conform to a limited life. Death is so painful because we're not supposed to die. The soul is eternal. We know it inside. Like, why should I change my body again? That's the meaning of human sense. If I'm eternal, why all the external posture and pretense? My time would be better spent overcoming rebirth and rising high into the spiritual sky. That's the meaning of human life. Human life is a unique opportunity to overcome the cycle of rebirth, which no one survives. Time to realize your eternal state and attain the spiritual world one day. We have free will to make our own decisions, but we have to face their actions the way we've been living. Sense enjoyment is fleeting and shabby. We do it over and over, but it never makes us happy. Not knowing our true nature, we cater to this temporary stuff, but it's never enough. We cage ourselves in this prison and numb our conscience in this crummy position, allow the media to condition us to shop for additions to this body, which we're not. Ignorance causes dissatisfaction to soul. We can't imagine why we're not happy. Then we grow old, get crabby, and go cold. It's hard to turn back once you've sold your soul. If you don't know why you're here, and be honest, you don't. You might find out if you considered the soul. So in spite of our chronic disinterest, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to deliver the chanting of Hare Krishna. Vairagavita Nidya Bhaktinam Shiksharteka Purushaparanam. He compared himself, Lord Chaitanya, delivering the means of deliverance from the spiritual world. He compared himself to a merchant. A merchant has a trade, especially international trade. If there's a scarcity in one place and an abundance in another place, you recognize an opportunity to make money by taking from the place where there's abundance to the place where there's scarcity. If the item exists in abundance in one place, that causes the prices to go down. But if you can transport that item to another place where it's in scarcity, then you can get a good price for your commodities. So Lord Chaitanya recognized that in the age of Kali, spiritual knowledge is very scarce. So what he did was he arranged to transport the Maha Mantra from the spiritual world to this material world. You might think of it as being abundantly present in the spiritual world, where every step is a dance and every word is a song, and not at all present in the material world. So Lord Chaitanya compared himself to a merchant who takes from a place where the holy name is abundant to a place where it's scarce, figuring that because of the very scarcity of it, people will be lined up. They'll be eager, like a department store during the Christmas sale. However, when Lord Chaitanya arrived here, he saw that people were hardly interested at all in chanting the holy names of the Lord. So then he did what any merchant would do, having taken a lot of trouble and expense to bring a valuable commodity from a place where it's abundant to a place where it's scarce, and finding that people are so foolish that they don't even want it. They don't even value it. They're not willing to pay for it. Prabhupada gave the example once, if you're passing out diamonds, nobody will take them. If you're passing out diamonds on the street, nobody will take them because they're thinking, you could not be passing out diamonds on the street. That's not possible. Who does that? Nobody passes out diamonds on the street. And so they look at you passing out, extending a diamond to them, and they say, well, I'm not going to take it because it's obviously fake. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered the holy name freely, distributed it, he and his disciples, and yet there wasn't a great amount of interest except among certain segments of the population. So then he said, what a merchant does when he takes his goods, his imported goods, to a country where people are not willing to purchase them, it's unthinkable to then go to the expense of putting them back on the boat and taking them from whence they came. So what he will do is cut his losses and give it up free of charge. He's standing on the dock, giving out this commodity, which is made even more valuable because of this local scarcity, free of charge. So Lord Chaitanya said, in this age without any qualification, without any background, without any real character, without any real training, without any real purity, without much intellectual acumen. Anybody who will accept the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, it will be given to them, and they can make their life successful. So going back to the specifics of Prabhupada's disappearance, for several months, Prabhupada had said that any of my disciples who can come to India should do so, to be with me for some period of time. Not necessarily to the end, but they could visit, stay with him a few days and come back and more or less say their farewells. Well, it just so happened that by the time I could get away from the temple in Berkeley, it was, I don't know, 11th, 12th of November. And so I landed in Delhi on, I think it was the 12th of November, probably was to pass away on the 14th. I had no idea. So I was in Delhi, and I had thought that as long as I'm in India, I'll do shopping for the gift store, spend a couple of days buying items wholesale, having them packed and shipped back to the gift store in Berkeley. So I remember I'm in Delhi, November 12th, debating whether I should get the business taken care of first and then go experience the nectar of being with Prabhupada and all the devotees, or whether I should go down to Vrindavan, which is about a 3-hour drive, 90-kilometer first, and then pick up all the gift store items on the way back. And fortunately, I made the decision to go first. So on the 13th of November, I traveled to Vrindavan, and I was in Prabhupada's room that evening, and he was being visited by several of his godbrothers. Krishnadas Babaji was there, Ban Maharaj was there, about 4 or 5 of them. And I remember Prabhupada was in his bed, lying horizontal, his head to my left, my right. And they were all sitting on a bench, these old men, very humble, very sweet. And they were speaking in Bengali. But every once in a while, Prabhupada would say, "Please forgive me if I made any offenses." Prabhupada said, I can be temperamental. So if I've made offenses, please forgive me if I've made offenses. And they were like, Swamiji, no, 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 don't say that. You don't have to apologize for anything. You did what we couldn't do in so many generations. You did single-handedly spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. But it was very sweet, very, very sweet last encounter between Prabhupada. And they had their differences, but in the end, none of it was taken very seriously. Everybody is trying to serve Krishna to the best of their ability and in their own way. So it was a very, very sweet. The next morning, and this is Prabhupada's room was right on the ground floor of the building there in Vrindavan. Building had a restaurant on the ground floor, and Prabhupada's quarters were off to the right. There was an outer room, and then there was an inner room. I remember I brought the pictures of Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram. Berkeley Temple's called New Jagannath Puri. That time we had the biggest and the only, I think, Rath Yatra in the Western countries. So I brought the 3 pictures of the deities, and I was able to put them on a bench right by Prabhupada's head when I arrived on the 13th. And they were still there along with other pictures and mementos throughout the day of the 14th. I remember the doctor, the Kaviraj, came to visit Prabhupada around noon, and he examined Prabhupada. Didn't seem to talk. I'm talking earlier about doctors. This is a really, really good example of what I was talking about early. The insight, the intuition that doctors get after many years of practice. This Kaviraj came, very distinguished older man, small stature. He's well known to Prabhupada. And he checked Prabhupada out. He didn't do a lot. He didn't have a stethoscope. He didn't have a white coat. He just came in and he just checked a few things with Prabhupada. And then he said, 7 hours. He said he has 7 hours. That was it. That was at 12:35 in the afternoon. And he passed away 7 hours later at 7:35 in the evening of November 14th. Prabhupada didn't say anything throughout the day. Some devotees said, he said Hare Krishna at the time of leaving the body. I was sitting like 18 inches away from his head. I didn't hear him say anything, but he was obviously very aware, very conscious. He was quite evidently not suffering in the way that an ignorant, ungod conscious person would suffer. He was giving directions, like when he wanted the blanket over, he would go like this, put the blanket over. When he was done, put it over, or he would indicate that he wanted some little water, some tulsi, or some Ganges water on the tip of his tongue. Very calm, but not verbal, not that I could see. And then there was a little bit of restlessness right around 7:30. And I'm looking right down. I'm just looking literally like this far from Prabhupada, and he convulsed a little bit. He closed his mouth, and then what happened was his mouth was open, and they were putting a little eyedropper of water and some tulsi in there, and his mouth closed and opened again, and then that was the departure of the soul at 7:35. November 14th, 1977. Prabhupada was 82 years old. He'd come in 65, so he'd been with us for 12 years, from the age of 70 until the age of 82. He'd established 108 centers. I think the latest count was he initiated 4,800 disciples, circled the world 14 times, wrote over 3,000 letters and correspondence, most of it by hand or on an old selectric typewriter, gave 3,000 lectures in person, Bhagavatam, morning and evening classes, Sunday feast classes, and then, of course, his greatest legacy are his books. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust continues to this day to publish some 70 or 80 volumes of books that he translated and commented upon in most of the languages of the world. The books have been distributed in the billions and billions, thanks to great stalwarts like Vijay and Vaisheshika, many others throughout the world. I was traveling with the BBT Library Party around 1975, and we happened to be in Berkeley when Prabhupada was also in Berkeley. It was shortly after Bhaktidas had acquired the Berkeley Temple, and interestingly, it was formerly a Mormon church that they had bought, and it wasn't a brand new building, but it was in good shape. And Prabhupada was there, and just before they were fixing up and altering it to become a place of worship. And we were there also at the BBT Library Party. And Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasan. There weren't many. It was in the middle of the afternoon, not any formal gathering. And there was a reporter there who asked Prabhupada, what's going to happen to your movement when you pass away? And Prabhupada was so fast with the answer, it was kind of, your head got dizzy. I'll never forget that moment. Far before the words left the reporter's mouth, Prabhupada said, I will never pass away. And everyone's like sitting there in stunned, shocked silence. What do you mean? The reporter started asking, what's going to happen to the movement when you pass away? And Prabhupada said, I will never pass away. And then, of course, after a beat or two, he said, I'll live forever in my books. A lot of people, they want Charu to tell Prabhupada stories. When I travel to different festivals and different places, they reassure themselves that I'm a Prabhupada disciple, and then, can you tell some stories about Prabhupada? And it's always fun. It's always fun to tell stories about Prabhupada. Um, not only was he a spiritual master, not only did he represent the disciplic session, not only was he right down the middle as far as the philosophy was concerned, not only was he conservative, not only was he orthodox, not only was he a bona fide representative, but he was also a really cool person as well. And he was 100% Krishna conscious. So almost every utterance, every gesture was meaningful, it was pregnant. Like we said, the Guru is heavy, heavy with knowledge and devotion of Krishna. So it's always fun. It's always fun to tell Prabhupada stories. It's fun to look at the memories. Siddhanta's done great service recording Prabhupada disciples, hundreds and hundreds of hours of recollections. But bottom line is, if you want to associate with Prabhupada, the books are more than enough. Prabhupada is non-different from his books. When he would be speaking, there would be nothing that he would say that didn't relate in some way, shape, or form to his books. His books were the foundation. He said his books are going to be the basis for this movement for the next 5,000 years. When I first met Prabhupada, it was in Australia in 1970. He made his first visit there in May. And we didn't have many books then. We just had the teaching of Lord Chaitanya. I think we had a blue covered Bhagavad Gita from Macmillan. There wasn't a lot of material available at that time. And I was an English major in college. And so, part of the courses were, Defoe and Dickens and all the great Dostoevsky and all. And so you would have this novel, which was made up. It was fiction. It wasn't like a documentary or every novel is maybe based on someone's true life experiences, but when we call something a work of fiction, it means the author's, not stepping back and not saying it happened necessarily like this. So on the dust cover of all popular, top-selling New York Times novels is a picture of the author. There's the book, and there's all that absorbs you, all that draws you in. If he's a good author, he pulls you in. He just grabs you, and you can't put the book down. The characters are so alluring. The action is, you can't wait to see what happens next. It's a whole other world. But then when you finish the book, then you're curious to know who wrote this book. And then you look at the picture of the author on the jacket flap, and you say, he was a correspondent in war zones, or he was a teacher at George Washington College, and he lives in Long Island, or he lives in Miami with his wife and 3 kids and 2 cats. So there's the author and then his work, and there was a duality. There was a dichotomy between them. So I couldn't help myself, based on my training, in anticipation of Prabhupada coming to Australia for the first time, of wondering who he was like. We'd read Teaching Lord Chaitanya, we'd read the Bhagavad Gita, but I was thinking, well, what is he actually like? What is he actually like, the author, apart from the work? The Prabhupada came, he spent 4 days in Australia in 1970, and I was later to be supplanted in the leadership position by Mohanananda Madhavisa, but at that time I was in charge, so to speak. And I spent most of those 4 days with him. I arranged some programs where he spoke in front of hundreds and hundreds of people in Sydney Town Hall and Sydney Grammar School and Wayside Chapel. But there were other times when it was just me and him in the room. He would pick up the harmonium and chant the Guru Vastakam in the morning and all. And in all those 4 days, there wasn't a word that didn't come right from his books. What my realization was during those 4 days that I spent with Prabhupada was that he's not any different from his books. He's the same as the books. And that in my case, I never, and people talk about, how great it was when Prabhupada was here, the good old days, and this and that and the other thing, and how much certainty there was, and how the ship of ISKCON was being navigated by an infallible person, and how good it was, and then they moan and groan about how, according to their perception, things are not as good, quote unquote, as when Prabhupada was here. But that's your fault, that's not on anybody else. That's your fault because Prabhupada left us everything in the form of his books. To say that things are not like they were when Prabhupada was here is not accurate because it's up to you as an individual to learn Prabhupada's books and to share the knowledge in Prabhupada's books. And as long as we're learning, we're taking in, and then we're putting out what we've taken in and sharing it, these, those were the good old days, but these are the good new days. There isn't any day that's not good if you're taking advantage of Prabhupada's books in Krishna consciousness. And the books are not limited. The books are not narrow. The books are, you can read a passage in a book and study it and discuss it, and then you'll come back to that same passage after 2 or 3 years, and you're a different person. You're not the same person you were 2 or 3 years ago. That verse has new meaning for you, new insights. It never gets stale. It never gets old. It remains always fresh because it's eternal. It's eternal sound vibration. It's not like me describing the way to Walmart. It's like it's an eternal spiritual world, and it's our home. It should strike a chord in us. Strike a chord in us. I was born and grew up in Pennsylvania. And I'm hearing a lot about Pennsylvania now as a swing state and deciding the election and everything. So these images of our home and 7-Eleven and Donegal and Stallstown and the acre of lot and the pine trees and the back porch where we'd have dinner, and my brother and my mother and my father, they come up from the past, and there's a nostalgia. There's a fondness, there's a rightness to those recollections and memories. And so the more we hear from Prabhupada's books and from Prabhupada about that world from which we come and of which we're originally a part, the more that we hanker after going back home, back to Godhead. And just on my own personal level, I can tell you I'm just having a lot of fun since COVID started, and things slowed down externally for a few years ago. I took advantage of that to take a lot of the literature that Prabhupada has left to us and kind of make it my own, kind of personalize it. This is something that every devotee can do. Prabhupada mentioned that devotees they automatically write books. They automatically write books. And someone might say, well, what do you write about? It's all there. There's not much that's new. But the point is the subject matter itself is spiritual. So it's alive, it's organic. And you can look at it, you can churn it, you can discuss it, you can relish it hundreds and hundreds of thousands of different ways. Our Miranda was giving a talk one time, and he talked about crime scene technicians. Crime scene technicians, they go to a spot where there's been a crime committed, and they pick up every twig, every cigarette butt, every candy wrapper. They take impressions of tire impressions. They take footprint impressions. They notice any twigs or branches or leaves that have been displaced. They spend hours and hours and hours, and they bag everything, and they analyze. They literally write books about every single piece of debris or anything that's has to do with that crime scene. So the acharyas, Vishwanath Chakrabarti, Vasudev, Baladev, Vidyabhusan, they've gone through the pastimes of Krishna, and Prabhupada just given us the tip of the iceberg. There's so much commentary about each and every one of Krishna's pastimes. and it's unending. It's like an ocean. So by all means, the facility is there, the latitude is there to personalize it, to make it yours. And I'll just end with an example of this. On this Parents' Day of Prabhupada. The Bhagavad Gita, for instance, we have the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita was the only book we had back in 1970 when Prabhupada came to Australia for the first time. And I've had the Bhagavad Gita has been part of my life for 50 years. Not at least 2 or 3 times a week. I've always given evening class based on the Bhagavad Gita for the last 50 years. So many lessons, so many times we've discussed the Bhagavad Gita. But yet you can still present the Bhagavad Gita in a way that's fresh, in a way that's new, in a way that you can reach newer, younger audiences. And here's just an example. This is just one example out of what possibly could be hundreds and hundreds of such examples. In the Bhagavad Gita, Song of the Supreme, Krishna streams to his team member Arjuna, the cream of all the devotees. Arjuna, the things you do every day, the gifts you give, and every tasty veggie dish, offer me with love and see your soul enriched. Cup of water makes me smile, though I could drink an ocean of flower, fruit, and leaf are fine if they're offered in devotion. Keeping me in the center of your karma will never interfere, because loving devotional service is the dharma of the spiritual atmosphere. I don't play any favorites. Everyone gets what they desire. So if someone longs for me in bhakti, I'm naturally inspired. Even if you mess up a time or two, I won't make any complaint. Just rise up again. You can still shine like a saint. The undiluted souls, Mahatmas, know reality, and feeling my protection, the flow of their affection comes to me. They sing my sacred names with voices sweet and stake their rightful claims at my lotus feet. I see, maintain, and shelter all. I am the seed of everything. I'm everyone's best friend. I'm the beginning, middle, and end. Arjuna, tell the people boldly, Krishna's devotee never dies. Men and women, high and lowly, everyone's equal in my eyes. Anyone who comes to me will never be denied. Bhakti Yoga will set you free. Success is guaranteed. Just think of me, become my devotee, and you will live with me eternally. Part 1. Part 2. No truth exists besides myself. Do not be misled. Everything rests upon me as pearls on a thread. I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om, the strength of the strong. I'm the fragrance of the earth. I'm the forest for our bright red. I'm a blazing sunset. I'm the alphabet from A to Z. I'm the Paramatma dwelling within everyone's heart. I'm the life of all that lives. I'm the ending, middle, and start. I'm the sacred Vishnu of all sorts of lights. I'm the sun, stars, and moon at night. The Himalayan mountains, unshakable, unbreakable, indicate me. I'm the unlimited, endless ocean of vegetation. I am banyan tree. I am Kandarpa, god of love, like Cupid with his bow. Of cows I am Sarabi, who gives milk and limitless flow. Of hymns I am Gadri, of seasons I am spring, of months I am the November, the time of peace and harvesting. Of beasts I am the lion, of men I am the king. I am Yama, lord of death, who judges everything. Of weapons I am the thunderbolt, of conquerors I am time, of rivers I am the Ganges, flowing liquid and sublime. I am the wind that purifies the spirit apart from the flesh. I am logic, pure, concise. I am all devouring death. All this is but an indication. There's no end to my manifestations. Every opulent, beautiful creation springs from but a spark of my radiation. What need to go on, Arjuna, with a more exhaustive list? A tiny spark of me pervades and supports all that exists. Because I create the dual worlds of spirit and flesh, the wise prioritize my service, keeping their hearts forever fresh. My pure devotees think of me and follow me all the time, discussing me incessantly. I am theirs and they are mine. Because they serve with love and never swerve aside, from within their hearts I cause ignorance to subside. The waters of transcendental knowledge I shine from within so bright, and in deep parental affection I guide them to the light. So that's Charu's recapitulation of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita as it stands for now, always evolving, always changing, always being tweaked, always improving. And in fact, Vallabha Chandra, who's been listening to these talks now for years, is in that mood as well. And I believe I saw something from him. Here we are, yes. From Vallabha Chandra, otherwise formerly known as Brett Spencer. You don't get the degree until you've served as a clerk. Otherwise, you aren't qualified to do the work. You can't go faster than the master. Work for him to build his temples with books and plaster. Take the time to observe and serve. Take a little time to grieve when the master leaves, then follow his instructions to continue his construction. You don't have to get the degree until you served as a clerk. Otherwise, you aren't qualified to do the work. You can't go faster than the master. Work for him to build his temples with books and plaster. Take the time to observe and serve. Take a little time to grieve when the master leaves, then follow his instruction, continue his construction. Nice. Bye, Vavi. Thank you for being with us. Patricia from San Diego. Good morning. Chad Dutch, thank you very much. Of course, Vallabha Chandra, Shali, Leah, Lilavati, Natasha, and on Zoom here with me, Kelly. Do you have anything you want to say to the rest of us this morning, Kelly from Idaho? You're let's see. Is there a reason I can't hear you? Are you on mute? Okay. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, Kelly joined us from uh, on Zoom as well. So tomorrow there's and you'll be interested in this also, Vallabha Chandra, there's an interfaith breakfast at Utah Valley University, and I'm obliged to be there for that. The president of Utah Valley University will be there, and be Brian Birch of the philosophy department will be there, and there'll be representatives of various faiths all having a breakfast, which will include vegetarian, vegan options, of course. So I'm going to be there heading up the discussion at one of the tables. Therefore, I'll not be able to be with you because it goes on simultaneously from 7:30 to 8:15. And then this weekend, we're going to Houston for the Rath Yatra, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday we'll be traveling as well. So stay tuned. I'll announce on my Facebook page when next we'll be able to get together in this manner. This has been Transcendental Tuesday. It's also Election Day. Whatever happens, just make sure you do a lot of chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Try.